thousands have been going past his casket since it arrived at the Capitol yesterday, including current and former lawmakers who've honored the 41st president's life and career in public service.
For more now on President George H.W. Bush's life, we're going to bring in former NTSB chairman and CBS News contributor Mark Rosenker. Mark served as an advance man for President Bush. So normally we would be talking to Mark about that plane crash in Mexico or something like that, right? But not today, because you've had quite an interesting life, and a portion of that life has to do with President Bush. So listen, you worked for actually 5 U.S. presidents. What stands out to you about working for George H.W. Bush?
Well, I actually spent more time with President George H.W. Bush than I spent with any of the others, because when he was vice president, I also did advance for him and spent a great deal of time. I remember some of my most fun experiences where he had just been elected president, and he had asked me to go up to New York with him because he and President Reagan were meeting Gorbachev. And there is this very famous photograph of him on Governor's Island with President Reagan and Gorbachev in front of the Statue of Liberty and part of the Manhattan. And it was an exciting opportunity to be part of this and to help stage that picture. And it is something that I will remember for a very, very long time, obviously.
And you know, Mark, just so our viewers know, that is part of your responsibility, or a responsibility of an advance man, right?
Absolutely. We're basically stagehands, we're stagecrafts, directors, we're personal aides, we do it all. And when I used to go between Christmas and New Year's down to the Lazy F Ranch down in Beeville, Texas, because I was single and I didn't have a whole lot to do at Christmas, so they sent me down to the ranch to be pretty much everybody, from being the chief advance guy to being the personal aide to doing press, everything, because they let the permanent staff off, and they would get to go home and spend time with their family.
So listen, we teased about this story that has to do a $100 bill. I was guessing that maybe it was a bet. Did you place a bet with the president and you didn't win, or what's the story?
No. At the end, you know, the president was a gentleman, and he spent time at the Lazy F Ranch, and the household staff that was there, he would like to give a little cash during that period of time. And I'll never forget this. He had asked, he said he didn't have any money on him, he said, and he said, "Mark, do you happen to have $100 in small change?" And I said, "Sir, I do. I've got it in 10s and 20s. He said, could you give me that 100 and I'll write you a check? Would that be okay?" And I said, and I tried to keep my excitement down. I said, "Yes, sir. If you need this 100, I've got it for you." And he wrote me a check, which I still have today, from the George H.W. Bush Personal Fund, signed by him. And I guess I'll never get rid of that.
No, definitely not.
That should go
probably
in the
worth more than
$100 for sure.
Absolutely.
One of the things, Mark, I want to ask you about is the kind. We've all week long we've been talking about his life in public service. This was a man who was born into privilege, but felt, because of his upbringing, his family, his parents, especially his mother, Dorothy Walker Bush, never let him forget how privileged he and his siblings were and why it was important to give back. And that's something that he spent his entire life doing. He was part of that greatest generation, served in World War II, was shot down. 2 of his crew members were killed during that episode, and he survived. Did he ever talk to you about that? Because I know that for certain people of that generation, talking about their heroism and the exploits is something that they don't usually do, and it just speaks to the larger picture of the kind of man that he was.
He was probably the classiest man that I had ever been exposed to. As President of the United States, he was just an amazing person, but he also knew that I was in the Air Force Reserve, and as a result of that, he ended up giving me an appointment to the American Battle Monuments Commission, which basically is the commission that has responsibility for all of the grave sites in Europe and around the world, but for folks that are not buried in the United States that were killed overseas, that were military.
You know,
great.
I had read you talked about spending the holidays with him because you were a young single man, so you didn't have a family to hang out with. I had read that he deliberately stayed in Washington for Christmas Eve because he wanted the men who were assigned to him as part of the Secret Service, men and women, to be able to spend time with their families too, which I thought was so thoughtful.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And he would either go to Camp David or stay in the White House. And only after Christmas would he actually begin travel. And it was a very, very small group that would travel with him during that period of time. That's why I kind of had about 7 different jobs when he was traveling between Christmas and New Year's.
Such great memories. Mark Rosenker, thank you so much for sharing them with us. Yeah, hold on to that, because we know that a lot of people have said that he was one of the great letter writers. He would write letters and notes to people all the time. But you have something even a little bit more special. You've got like a check that you maybe don't ever try to cash it.
It's too late now to try to cash it. It's worth a lot more in personal sentiment than it is in any cash.
Indeed. Mark, thank you so much.
Good to be with you.